The 7 completed terraces just below the Shrine of the Bab were open to pilgrims for the first time. These first visitors to ascend the path of the kings were followed soon after by a visit of the Universal House of Justice, which in its annual message to the Baha'i world unveiled the prime directives launching the 4-year plan, organizing the efforts of the worldwide Baha'i community around the important initiative designed to propel the faith of God into the 21st century. The Supreme Body assessed the significant achievements of the just concluded 3-year plan and elaborated on the general features of the new plan, the outline of which had been sent to the community several months earlier. The central objective of the entire plan is an intense and systematic effort to advance the process of entry by troops everywhere in the world. The Universal House of Justice announced that current circumstances demand and existing opportunities allow for sustained growth of the Baha'i world community on a large scale. 8 supplemental regional letters called upon specific populations and peoples to arise and take on special tasks as their contribution to the progress of the faith. In order to move beyond current efforts, the House of Justice called for the establishment of institutes involving the close collaboration of national and local assemblies with their councilors and auxiliary board members. The programs of these institutes are to deepen large numbers of individual believers, young and old, veteran and newly enrolled, in the fundamental verities of the faith, raising up knowledgeable and competent teachers who can confidently convey the message of Baha'u'llah to the waiting multitudes. The message elaborates the distinct responsibilities of the individual, the institutions, and the community in the process of entry by troops, calls for new commitments of devotion, understanding, and sacrifice, and predicts changes of epochal magnitude in these closing years of the millennium. The message was the subject of consultation at the 174 National Baha'i Conventions, at 19-day feasts, and in assemblies and consultative gatherings all over the planet.
The National Assembly is summoning the entire community to 3 lines of action. The first is to study the Rizwan messages. The second is to become involved in training institutes. And the third is to double the active core of believers in the first 12 months of the plan.
The second major challenge of the 4-year plan is to sustain the work of the Mount Carmel projects, where momentum on the project sites continues at a high level. The elaborate structural work on Terrace 19 is now complete, and the 53 carved stone pedestals are being put in place along the promenade on Panorama Road. At the construction site of the International Teaching Center, the work is proceeding vigorously on levels 4 and 5, where the form of the auditorium, located near the heart of the building, is gradually becoming visible. On Hazionut Avenue, the main thoroughfare separating the Shrine of the Bab from the Ark and the upper terraces, excavation of the southern half of the road has been completed to a depth of over 15 feet. Footings are being poured to support the new bridge that will span the lowered roadway between terraces 10 and 11. The work of this phase, now in progress, includes a sizable building underneath Terrace 11, which will provide much-needed facilities for public information work, a visitor center with auditorium, displays, and exhibits for the ever-increasing flow of visitors. The most dramatic progress, without a doubt, has come with the uncrating of the first cut marble and the installation of the columns, complete with capitals, adorning the front entry of the Center for the Study of the Texts. Carved pilasters have been fixed to the ends of the building, and work is proceeding rapidly on the facade. The Center for the Study of the Texts, together with the Archives Extension Building, are scheduled to be completely finished before the end of the four-year plan.
The Bosporus, that narrow channel between the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara, has long been the strategic bridge between Europe and Asia, between the East and the West. It is flanked by the historic city of Constantinople, now known by its modern name of Istanbul. Baha'u'llah was exiled here in 1863, following his expulsion from Baghdad. Living for 5 months in the shadow of the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire until the machinations of the enemy led to his further banishment to Adrianople. This peaceful garden has been developed on the site of one of his residences, and the house of Razabeg, to which he withdrew during one of the periods of his ministry, has recently been carefully restored. The presence of Baha'u'llah always attracted visitors, many in mysterious and mystical ways. And so they still come today, often attracted in that same intuitive fashion.
In my dream there was a palace, and the palace is here in Constantinople, and I have seen it. So I suppose that I was supposed to come here to become a Baha'i.
Little wonder then if there should be a special feeling among the Baha'is participating in the year-long process leading up to Habitat 2, the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements, which convened in Istanbul together with a companion NGO forum. It was the last in a series of conferences on major global issues convened by the United Nations over the past 7 years, and demonstrates the continuing evolution of a global process of collectively defining and expanding global consensus about the challenges of humanity's common future.
Continuing our debate.
The thematic tone of the conference contrasted sharply with the technical orientation of the first Habitat meeting. The plenary statement of the Baha'i international community articulated themes that were frequently echoed by others throughout the gathering.
In the long term, however, community building efforts will succeed only to the extent that they link material progress to fundamental spiritual aspirations.
The Baha'is of Turkey spearheaded a nationwide effort to organize support for Habitat 2.
The Turkish Baha'i community entered this process a year ago and said, we want to use this to help influence the processes towards world peace. We want to use it to train in external affairs, to give to our nation some of the values, the ideas that Baha'u'llah has brought to the world, and to use it to move our work, our community, into the next stage of its responsibility in Turkey, but in the world.
The results were most impressive. Baha'i institutions and agencies held more than 35 workshops, while individual Baha'is presented and participated in many more. Kevin Locke and his daughter Kimi Miller performed for standing room only crowds on 2 evenings. The performance artfully weaves the Baha'i teachings into a tapestry of traditional Lakota music, dance, and storytelling.
No matter who you are, we're all part of one line. In this design, there's no back row. There's no third row, and no second row. We all have front row seats today. We're all there invited to stand shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, hand in hand, to walk and share our destiny. This is what Baha'is believe. This is what Baha'u'llah has asked us to do now. The design may look something like this. It's a hoop made up of everybody. The hoop represents peace.
The media also praised the performance, calling it one of the most spectacular shows in Habitat. Baha'i youth played an active and vital role in a variety of areas and activities, including major contribution to the drafting of the Youth Vision Statement, widely heralded as one of the most visionary proclamations of the meeting.
The Youth Caucus here in Istanbul, and the youth community as a whole, has made a number of very, very powerful written presentations at different times in the conference, and I'm very pleased to be able to say that all of these presentations were, if not totally, and to a very, very great extent, centered around Baha'i themes and Baha'i ideals and sharing the Baha'i vision. This began at the very beginning of the conference with the opening session of the NGO Forum, at which one representative of the Youth Caucus did a speech which had been co-prepared by two of the Baha'i youth here. The speech was very, very warmly received, and throughout, really, the vision that was expressed was the Baha'i youth vision.
You have added today, through this declaration that you've given, this mission statement, you have added great value, great vitality, but you have added vividness to the Istanbul story.
More than 60,000 copies of Baha'i statements were distributed from 4 different exhibits mounted by the National Spiritual Assembly of Turkey, the Baha'i International Community, the European Baha'i Youth Council, and the European Baha'i Business Forum. Hundreds more were distributed directly by the UN to government delegations and top UN officials. 8,000 buttons containing the words of Baha'u'llah in English and Turkish were given out to launch the World Citizenship Campaign. They seemed to capture the spirit of the conference and were to be seen everywhere.
I mentioned the earth is but one country, mankind is citizens. Now that is a very wise move, because people now realize that we're not trying to promote the Baha'i faith, we're trying to promote world citizenship. Everyone's wearing it because everyone agrees.
Dr. Wali Endau, the Secretary General of the conference, publicly and repeatedly recognized the contributions of the Baha'is to the Habitat process, emphasizing that spiritual principles must drive the process of building viable communities in today's world. More than ever before, Baha'is were solicited to convene meetings, participate in caucuses, help foster a spirit of consultation between diverse and at times antagonistic groups, and to help draft the language of statements and declarations. Notable among these was a joint NGO submission of draft recommendations for the official Habitat Agenda.
When we look in the Habitat Agenda, this is a document, the official government agreed position that's going forward. We have contributed, as other non-governmental organizations, we have contributed to this document. There is some phrasing in this that comes from the contributions we made. And as you saw previously, for the first time in UN history, they have issued the NGO suggestions, of which we are one of 11 NGOs, as an official UN document. This is historic.
Level UN and government officials and the press were among the more than 350 guests at a reception hosted by the Baha'i International Community and the National Spiritual Assembly of Turkey. This was twice the expected turnout and a sign of the prestige and respect now accorded to the Baha'is in UN circles. The impact of the active, large and highly visible Baha'i delegation was of a magnitude and scale never before attained in UN conference work. 150 Baha'is in attendance comprise the largest NGO delegation at the official government conference, and quite possibly at the NGO forum as well. Their unity, generosity of spirit, and inspiring vision are helping to define a new style of leadership grounded in selfless service to the whole of humanity. The success of their efforts marks the achievement of a new level of sophistication and maturity in the external affairs work of the Baha'i international community.
Elsewhere, signs of great maturity can be seen in the increasing levels of interaction with government officials and leaders of thought by Baha'is at both national and local levels. Spanish-speaking Baha'is in the Los Angeles area organized a special reception for diplomats from Latin American countries, commemorating the birth of Baha'u'llah. Among those attending were the Consul General of Guatemala, Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, El Salvador, Mexico, and Nicaragua, as well as officials from Spain and Honduras. All received Spanish-language copies of Baha'i statements on international issues and a presentation about the faith by Councilor Arturo Serrano.
It's a certificate of recognition from the Senate of the State of California and is presented to the San Francisco Baha'i Center in honor of its annual Nowruz celebration.
Baha'is in San Francisco use Nowruz as an opportunity to invite friends and prominent local leaders to be guests of the Baha'i community.
Baha'is in Mexico City helped organize a very successful conference on social development as a follow-up to last year's UN conference in Copenhagen. The gathering included impressive participation from various embassies, the Congress, UN offices, political organizations, and the World Bank.
In Havana, Cuba, Mexican, Brazilian, and Canadian Baha'is worked with Cuban believers to organize the first public presentation on the Baha'i faith in more than 3 decades. The exhibit at the nation's International Book Fair attracted much favorable attention, providing the opportunity to present Baha'i literature to members of the ruling Politburo and to Ramon Castro, the elder brother of Cuba's premier and a leading figure in the government. Some 5,000 people visited the Baha'i exhibit at the fair. Ediciones Cabas, a Cuban publisher, offered to publish a Baha'i book, and the authorities invited the Baha'is to return for the next exhibition in 1998.
In Tonga, Baha'is garnered support from the Prime Minister's office for a conference on violence-free families, addressing a serious and widespread problem and promoting the moral development of the community.
On behalf of the Prime Minister's office, Madam Chairlady, I would like to pay tribute to the Baha'i Church, and in particular to your committee, for highlighting for us the indisputable fact that the family is the cornerstone of all nations.
In Bermuda, a bold initiative of the National Spiritual Assembly led to an act of Parliament to create a permanent government commission on unity and racial equality. Councillor Wilma Ellis met with the Prime Minister and his deputy on multiple occasions as the initiative unfolded over the past several years.
I think that sometimes we underestimate the significance which we have on the lives of people who we touch. The Baha'is should not be under any illusions whatsoever. They have been extremely useful and valuable to the effort in Bermuda of dealing with racism and basically trying to eradicate it. And I hope that the Baha'is in the future will continue to be so.
The 14-member commission, which includes a Baha'i from a respected Bermudian family, is charged with the task of educating society on the subtle influences of racism and prejudice, while the Baha'i community has emerged as a recognized contributor to racial harmony on the island.
And I pray that you will continue this work, because this is one of the things that this earth needs. We cannot go forward until we reach the unity of races and the equality of women and men.
Spiritual assemblies in the United States are currently engaged in a project coordinated by the National Spiritual Assembly to present a turning point for all nations to all members of the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. The project is designed to inform the U.S. Congress of Baha'i perspectives on the development of international institutions and to encourage congressional support for the further development of the United Nations.
In the Brazilian state of Bahia, Miss Anera Santiago was among an elite delegation of the country's most distinguished women assembled to meet with visiting American First Lady Hillary Clinton. After embracing the faith, she rose from her humble surroundings to educate herself and establish a pre-primary school, providing much-needed services to the children of the poor in the city of Salvador. During a luncheon with Mrs. Clinton, Ms. Santiago had the opportunity to speak briefly about the faith and was able to present the prosperity of humankind to the numerous diplomats and persons of prominence gathered for the occasion.
And finally, at the World Center, Minister Joseph Bailey from the Prime Minister's office is the latest in a series of government dignitaries to visit the Baha'i projects on Mount Carmel. Accompanied by the Director General of the National Economic Planning Committee, the minister expressed his admiration for the Baha'i projects. When viewed as a whole, these activities clearly illustrate that the Baha'i community is reaching a new level of sophistication and involvement in external affairs. This capacity continues to be critical for the protection of the Baha'is in Iran and is one of the signs of the increasing maturity of the Baha'i community and its institutions.
Spiritual transformation is a primary goal of Baha'i life, developing distinctive qualities in individuals and communities. In response to Baha'u'llah's explanation of the high station of teachers, students at the Inter-Community Baha'i Speech Club of Ventura County, California, organized an annual program to honor and appreciate their teachers for the spiritual, social, and intellectual training upon which the well-being of the next generation depends.
Deal ye one with another with utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship.
Children of all ages invite their teachers to the program where they give speeches about Baha'i teachings. These gestures create new friends for the faith, while advancing the spiritual education of the children in the community.
In God's sight, the best of all ways to worship Him is to educate the children and train them in all the perfections of humankind. And no nobler deed than this can be imagined.
Baha'is in Louisville, Kentucky launched the 4-year plan with an ambitious conference on gender equality.
One of our primary intentions with this conference was to call it a gender equality conference and not just a women's conference. Why? Because this principle, this vital principle of equality, is not just a women's issue. It is a human issue.
Abdu'l-Baha linked the emancipation of women to the establishment of peace and the future well-being of the earth and its peoples. It is indeed interesting to note the increasing attention being given to this matter within the Baha'i community, even as the world at large moves steadily, yet unconsciously, toward the lesser peace. The conference signaled a heightened awareness and commitment to implement this fundamental principle ever more fully in the lives of Baha'i families and communities.
In Chicago, Race Unity Day was commemorated with a walk for racial unity through the heart of the city. Sponsored by the North Shore Race Unity Task Force, a social and economic development agency of the National Spiritual Assembly, the walk attracted favorable publicity on local radio. A busload of Baha'is traveled from Milwaukee to support the event, joining participants from the Greater Chicago area Baha'i communities in a public affirmation of this community's commitment and determination to rid itself from the patent evils of racial prejudice and to create bonds of love and fellowship between the races. Baha'is in Kansas City organized their 12th annual Race Unity Day program with a prayer vigil followed by a multi-ethnic concert.
The Baha'is have created a contract.
The program was covered as a story in the evening television news.
And if you start thinking from inside out instead of outside in, then these things begin to change.
The Baha'is believe uniting with other people can produce a dialogue that will help stamp out violence and racial divisions.
Get some more to get to know each other better and maybe erase the hate.
Mayors in both Kansas City and Chicago issued special proclamations according additional recognition to Race Unity Day.
The miracle of the Internet, a rapidly growing worldwide system of interconnected computers, has captured the popular imagination and is having significant impact on global communications. For Baha'is, the Internet is proving to be a valuable tool and an apparent fulfillment of Shoghi Effendi's prediction. Baha'is worldwide are benefiting from the speed and efficiency of electronic mail, which aids in communications, planning, information exchange, deepening, and generally staying in touch with loved ones around the world. With the growing wealth of Baha'i information and communication on the Internet, it is becoming an important source for the growth of the faith as well. Susie Esser, a student at Bucknell University in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, explains how she investigated the faith.
After I exhausted our library's resources, I decided to look on the Internet because I hadn't found any Baha'is living in the area. So I typed in Baha'i and it found a bunch of things and had an address, so I sent them an email letter saying, "Hi, I don't know much about the Baha'i faith. Somebody tell me something, please."
In response to her inquiry, Susie met her Baha'i teacher online.
Mike Wallace from South Hadley, Massachusetts. He wrote to me sometimes 2-3 times a day, answered all my questions, and sent me a whole bunch of writings because he has them all on disk and you can look them up just like a touch of a button. Basically, he loves to teach. I think it's his only joy in life. But
other Baha'is on the Internet helped her to find the local community.
Some of the people I communicated with online sent letters to people in Pennsylvania. The people in Pennsylvania sent letters to me saying, "Come to our house, have a fireside," things like that. Someone from a foreign country could tell me someone to know in Pennsylvania. It was very interesting that way, the interconnectedness of everybody.
As a new Baha'i, Susie continued to use the Internet to participate in a growing variety of discussion groups formed to stimulate teaching and deepening.
I'm on Baha'i Women Converse, which is basically an all-women's group that talks about women's issues. One of the more popular groups is Baha'i Discuss, which is basically anyone who wants to is on that. There's no limitations. There's also a Baha'i singles group I know on the Internet, a whole lot of different groups for just about any interest you have.
There are no statistics for worldwide use of the Internet by Baha'is, but approximately 1,500 messages pass through the email system of the Baha'i National Center in Wilmette every week, a sign of the tremendous integration of Internet communications that has already been achieved in the Baha'i community, and a portent of the great expansion that lies ahead.
The development of folk arts for expansion and consolidation has been encouraged in the Rizwan message. Traditional arts can also be an instrument for improving the general living conditions of communities, as recently demonstrated in several Akamba villages in the Kitui region in central Kenya. The Makiniani Women's Project was initiated by 3 Baha'i women in a rural area still reeling from a devastating 2-year drought. After taking inventory of their own skills, the decision was made to develop the traditional skills of weaving, which have long been used in the production of beautiful baskets from the area. With modest aid from development grants, spinning and weaving centers have been set up in several villages, producing artfully woven tapestries, which are being sold in Africa, Europe, and North America. Local artists created the designs using traditional motifs with a sensitivity to the tastes of the international marketplace. Raw material comes from the sisal plant, which is plentiful in the area. The leaves are first split into fine strands of fiber. Carding removes knots and tangles from the sisal, which can then be woven into a strong thread. quality colorfast dyes are imported from Europe to create the bright saturated colors favored by the artisans. Other measures are also being taken to improve the quality of life in the area. This village health center was recently completed and has begun to deliver rudimentary health services to mothers and children in the surrounding area. Other sister initiatives are producing cooking oil, baked goods, and candles on a small scale. A newer project has been launched to produce dried fruit. Mangoes are very abundant in the area, but only during a short harvest season. Without means for preservation, most of the fruit will go to waste. These ingenious solar dryers have been designed and manufactured using local craftsmen. Mangoes are gathered each morning and thin slices are placed on large drying screens prior to insertion into the large solar drying ovens. The ovens are reoriented towards the sun throughout the daily hours and are efficient enough to complete the entire process in one day. The dried mangoes are then hand-packed and sold in the market. Over the past 7 years, these projects have helped improve the lives of about 4,000 people. Life is still hard, but household incomes have risen by up to 400%. Reported usage of alcohol is down. The status of women in the community has been raised, and there are now at least 5 strong and active local spiritual assemblies in the area. Motivated by a selfless spirit of service, the Kitui projects have been singled out for recognition as an exemplary approach that nurtures a balance of material and spiritual development. Perhaps above all else, the Kitui projects illustrate the great power of grassroots initiative as an instrument for social change, for building community and developing individual human potential, the bedrock processes in construction of a new world order.